Do you or a friend you know want to get into FFTCG but don't want to break the bank? Or maybe you want to get competitive right away at locals but you're just not sure what to build? Today we're going to be looking at 3 different decks that you can build on a budget and still be competitive at your local scene. Maybe you just want to get into FFTCG, or maybe you want to get a friend into FFTCG, and this is going to be a really great way to do that. These decks can see play at Crystal Cups. We've seen them in local qualifiers, and they're all really powerful decks. The decks themselves are going to run you about $100 or less, and that's a pretty good price point. And some of those prices will go way down if you're able to get some starter decks for $15-20 like you can see online in some stores. But if you have to buy the singles for starter cards, that's where it kind of drives up the price for some of these decks. And you're probably guessing already which decks I am talking about. One final thing, I used cardsofevilise.com to price all of the cards in this video. They're my favorite company to use for singles, and I recommend you check them out in case you want to buy the singles to build these decks yourself. This first deck is sure to be familiar to you. We've seen it in the top 8 of 3 different Crystal Cups. We are of course talking about Gregory Cole's The Warrior of Lights, Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Scions of the Seventh Dawn is a Lightning Earth aggro deck. And when I say aggro, I mean fast. It can set up really quickly with a backup Alizé that gives all of your Scions of the Seventh Dawn forwards haste, and at that point your opponent's on a clock to stop you before you can swing in for damage. It has a ton of different synergies to do with Scion of the Seventh Dawn, so most of your forwards and your backups have that job. It also has lots of removal to try to bypass your opponent and get in a victory. This deck is perfect for beginners because it has a relatively easy floor but a really high ceiling for experienced players. And if you doubt me, then just take a look at Greg Cole. Do you see other players with the Scions of the Seventh Dawn in the top 8 of Crystal Cups? You don't, because he's put an incredible amount of time into playing that deck and mastering it, and it's not that easy to take it that far. But in terms of locals, it's going to be everything you need to win some matches and even win the whole thing, as you can catch people off guard, and it's just a great best of 1 deck. Taking a look at some of the cards, they're actually pretty cheap. Even the starter singles are fairly affordable. You can also buy the Opus V Final Fantasy XIV Scions deck as a package, and you're going to get all the starter Scions that are going to get you set up. You're also going to need a few hero Scions, including Y'shtola, to help out with your removal. And there's some other great cards that you can add in, like the Cecil Legend from Opus V. He is a pretty expensive card, and you could look into other directions, but he's just a really good card to own, and he's also in the new Wraith vs. Onion Knight starter deck, so you might have him already. Otherwise, I've put in a new 2 Gnolls from the new set because I think that's going to be a really fun card to experiment with, especially in this deck. And we also have the Warriors of Darkness, Alba, and Diana packages. It's a really fast package that has haste, it has recursion, it has bypass with stalling forwards, and I think that it fits really well in Scions. Moving right along, the next deck saw a ton of play in Opus VIII, and it still sees play now. It is a very competitive deck, very competent deck, consistent, and it has an insane amount of EX bursts. All of these things make it really fun to play, and of course I'm talking about the Final Fantasy VII Fire Earth deck. This deck is great for newcomers to the game because a lot of people love Final Fantasy VII, and it gets them into the game with something that can do some damage, but they also get to play with a lot of their favorite characters. The Final Fantasy VII Earth Fire deck is kind of a mid-range deck. It can start slow and just gain a ton of value from EX bursts. There's cards like Marlene that recurs cards from your break zone, Zangan that searches, Belias that draws, and all sorts of cards like that. It also has a ton of EX burst removal like Titan Yojimbo, Brynhildr, Mustadio, and all sorts of other cards. We also have a ton of just value engines included in the deck, and that includes cards like Jessie that reduces your Barretts and your Clouds by 1 CP, and if you have Cloud out on the field, you can play a 4 CP Earth Tifa for 2 CP. These cards can quickly get you a lot of advantage, and because you're not spending as many cards from hand to play them, you're able to cast more things and play more forwards. This deck can quickly get out of hand and can even pivot to being a little bit aggressive if need be, which is why for this list I've put 2 Nails in from Opus IX. They're an aggressive card, but it can also grab you a bunch of forwards and just kind of help you put some pressure on your opponent. Looking at the prices for this deck, it says it's going to be $81, but that's actually not quite the case. If you take a look at the price for the Barretts and the Tifas, those are if you're buying the singles. You can cut that down to just $20 if you can buy the starter deck online, and that will actually make the deck price closer to $60. Looking at the rest of the deck, there aren't that many expensive cards. Nail's gonna cost you about $5 a piece, and you can actually find him for cheaper depending if you're at your local store or you're trading with your local players, because he was a box topper, so there'll probably be people with extra nails at your locals. And same thing with Cloud, he was also a box topper. He's $4 a piece, but you will probably be able to find not a cheaper single price, but you'll be able to find trades for Clouds at your local game stores, getting this price down even more. The final deck is the cheapest one of all, and you can see by the image that it's Chocobos. This mono win deck is only $15 and is just always coming in and out of local play. Now, this deck might not take you to the top of a Crystal Cup, but it's certainly going to be competitive at locals, and you can see it pop up all the time on FF decks. And the best part is that all of these Chocobos are commons and rares, and the one card that you really need to spring for are Arcs and Fat Chocobos. And the Arcs maybe might be hard to find, but the Fat Chocobo is actually there's a new card from Opus IX that does the job. And if you want the Legend Fat Chocobo, well, that comes in the Heroes vs Villains starter deck and is actually very easy to get as well. The deck itself also plays very fast. I mean, it's kind of a theme with the decks we've looked at so far. They're all pretty fast decks, and I think that's a really good way to get a new player in, is just have quick matches. You can learn from them really quickly, and you can catch people off guard and just win some matches in best of one play. So I think that this is a really fun deck that you can experiment with, and if you want to go higher budget, you can start adding things like maybe a Y'shtola or a Zidane, but honestly, it's just a deck that runs itself. It has so many different Chocobo synergies, and it's just a lot of fun. I mean, who doesn't love Chocobos? And that's going to be it for me, but I want to hear from you. What do you think about these budget decks? Have you tried any of them out yourself, or are you thinking about getting one for one of your new players at your locals? Let me know in the comments below if you have any feedback for me, and we'll see you next time. Just one last thing I want to mention before I go. I have a special offer for all of my viewers. It's a discount code for cardsofrelease.com. Just use the promo code PorumPalum10 and you'll get a discount on your order. That's PorumPalum10, and I'm sure I'm going to put that on the screen somewhere around here. Thank you so much for watching. You can like and subscribe to support us further, and you can read the Mysidia Post articles at themysidiapost.com. You can also check out our Patreon if you want to support us more. And if you need FFTCG singles, then look no further than Cards of E-Release. They've got great deals and prices. Check them out. Finally, I'd like to thank FF Decks for creating the best website for creating your Final Fantasy trading card game decks. They've also got a Patreon, so make sure you go check them out. They work so hard for the community, so let's pay them back. See you next time.